Hey, everybody, this is Maxine Taylor with another mover and shaker. Welcome to Move Into the Magic. My guest this week is a dear friend I've known forever. Her name is Myrna Bentley. And Myrna, some of you know, is one of the premier handwriting analysts in the country. She graduated from the International Graphoanalysis Society in Chicago in 1966. She has 50 years experience, including TV appearances, speaking engagements, teaching classes, entertainment at conventions and parties, as well as doing individual analyses. Myrna, welcome to Move Into the Magic.
Thank you, Maxine. How are you today?
I am great. And what I want you to do, if you would, everybody's dying to hear about what you have to say about their handwriting. I know that. So, first of all, before I turn you loose to explain all of those beautiful loops and T-crosses and I dots that are so characteristic of the traits that we have, will you tell us, please, because this blew me away when you told this to me years ago, will you tell us about how you can change a trait within yourself if you change your handwriting?
Boy, you're starting off with the hardest thing. I mean, you have to be careful if you're going to do that. Let me sort of ease into that a little bit, because let's just take one stroke. It's the one I love to give to young people, because they're just starting out in life, they're graduating, they're anxious about a job. How you cross your T. Do you realize there are 13 or more traits that you can see by just how people make their T? This is just a very simple explanation. If you cross your T high, this is confidence. This is where you set your goals. Are they high or are they low? If the T-bar is very, very low, I just tell them real quick, they sell themselves short. They don't aim near as high as they're capable of going. In the middle, they push a little bit. There's a little bit of confidence involved. They don't really sell themselves short, but they don't really aim for the most that they could do. Most that they could do. Go out on a limb, to quote Shirley MacLaine. Yeah. So yes, young people, I will tell them, cross your T's higher. Cross your T's higher. Well, you can't just cross your T a few times higher and have a trait. And you never try to change more than one trait at a time, because handwriting is really brain writing. Unless it's in your head to make a T a certain way, you will make it another way, which is in your head, so to speak. They are doing research now on the brain. And, you know, a lot of schools in some states are taking cursive writing out of the curriculum. They're not even teaching it. And it's such a mistake. It's such a mistake, because they are proving now that cursive writing aids the brain. But getting back to changing a trait with changing your writing. If what you're doing is you're sending, if you make a T-bar up high when it's not natural, you are sending a reverse pattern to the brain. And you have to send it so many times before it becomes a habit. Once it becomes a habit, you have given yourself that trait. And so I tell all my young people, but hey, anybody that needs to aim a little higher, have a little more confidence, they don't have to be young. It's just such a prime group to work with, the kids. That you met my grandson earlier, and he is my prime subject. I work on him. I said, cross those T's high, Max. But so yes, you can change a trait. And I don't know a single handwriting analyst. I don't know many. There are not many, you know. I hope it's not a dying art. I really do, because it's so, so helpful and so easy to learn. And that gets me on another subject, sort of. I say it's easy to learn. But if you go to the library, handwriting's been around for hundreds of years. I think it was Nero that said, I can tell by his mark he's a traitor. I mean, you go to the library, you can get books by different authors on handwriting. The only thing is they don't really agree. And a lot of them are a little vague. And you come away and you're saying, well, that was interesting, but what did I really remember? How can I really learn this? I was lucky. I got a book given to me when my little kids wanted a present for Mother's Day, and my mother helped them out. I got a book by M.N. Bunker, who spent his whole life researching this. This is where all the teaching from International Grapho comes from. He said if his sweetheart had married him, he probably would never have done it. And he interviewed people, but the point of all this that I'm telling you is he wanted to find out what individual stroke could be identified with an individual trait. And that's why this is so easy to learn. I mean, can you pick up anybody's handwriting and say, oh, you make good T's, you know, your T's are high. You have a lot of confidence in yourself. You have a dream. You really will push. Might not succeed, but you'll give it the effort. And then if you see somebody that just crosses their T's way down, sometimes lower than the lowercase letters. I mean, sometimes it's really bad. And boy, you just know right off the bat, you really sell yourself short. You are not aiming near as high as you're capable of going. But another thing you would tell somebody that has that really low T-bar is you play it safe. You don't want to get into anything you don't think you can do well. They don't want to push because it is actually a fear trait. When it's that low, it's a fear of failure. And you don't want to fail. And so you will stick to something that you're really, really happy with. Now, on occasion, you will see somebody so successful, like a brain surgeon. Well, he's accomplished his goal. He is head of whatever he wants to be head of. Maybe has his own TV show. But he won't have that high T-bar. Maybe. And that's because he's just so happy with what he's doing and what he's done and what he's accomplished. He doesn't need to aim high. He just doesn't have that urge anymore. And so that is something that is, you know, but I can take strokes. And it's so much fun. Like, you're a very, very probably, you might not like the word, but I'm going to use it anyway, psychic. But you're so advanced in what you do, your astrology and everything. But just pulled a metal plane. Oh, I know. Intuition, sixth sense, hunches, knowing things without knowing why. You can spot this by breaks in the writing. You write a few letters and you stop, no matter how long the word is. can be a short word or it can be a long word, but you write a few letters and you stop. Write a few more letters, stop. This is intuition. This is that sixth sense. It's hunches. But I call it guidance. If you learn to work with your intuition, you have got such a plus going for you. I mean, it'll help you with finding a parking place. It'll help you making decisions about your career. It'll help you pick out what to wear. I mean, it's just a marvelous, good little bit of guidance going there. And so pick up somebody's handwriting. Breaks. The idea is that the brain stops just long enough to let something else come through. Of course, we have to believe it's something else, but I do. So I'm going to give you a few little traits that you can play with. You don't have to take my word for it. Bunker said way back when, he says, don't take my word. He says, just learn a few traits and go out and practice. And when people say, you're right, how do you know that? I've been doing this for 50 years. And people say, how did you know that? I was in the dentist chair just this week. And my dentist, I've been going to her for a long time. I love her to death. And she said, guess what I found cleaning up the other day? He says, you remember when my partner, Dr. King, had you do everybody's handwriting in the office? And I said, yeah, I don't remember what I said, but I remember doing it. And she says, we found mine. And she says, my son, who is grown, getting ready to be a dentist himself, he says, Mom, she nailed you. Well, you don't have to hear that many times. And you don't have confidence in yourself. You have confidence that this man did his research so good that you can believe it and you can play with it. And so what good does it do you, say? I went into it because I wanted it to be fun. I wanted to go to a party and have something to do if things got boring. And now I hope that nobody mentions it because they will stand in line waiting to get a little. People love to hear about themselves. They do. But why is it good to know? Yes, it's fun. I still enjoy doing it. But what it's done for me, I know my fears. I may not conquer them good, but knowing them makes you better able to deal with it. And and then if you know your fears, you figure out your defenses. I'll tell you what my big fear was, because it's something a lot of people have. In fact, Max, my grandson, was telling me up at college, he says, the kids do not know how to handle criticism. They worry about what people think all the time. Well, see, I thought that was my generation, and maybe yours, Maxine, your generation behind me. But he said that, no, the young people are very anxious and very worried. I want you to look at your small d. This is, of course, a cursive D. That's another subject, what the computer is doing to the kids' writing. They don't write anymore. They print, and it looks like little computer printouts. So if you're listening to this and you have any kids in your life, be they young or even college age, tell them to learn to write. Oh, so much is told by the loops, the upper loops, the lower loops, the swooshes, the swirls, the backward. It's just so much can be told by it. And so this trait of mine, the worst, that nobody ever had it worse. And when I read it in the book, when I was studying, I thought, that's not me. That just means you don't know yourself. I mean, if it says that and you say, oh, that's wrong, that's not me. But it bugged me. And I started, all right, let me show you, tell tell you the trait, and then I'll tell you what I did or what it didn't do for me. That little D, if it has a loop in it, which means you know, I had one here, but I'm not going to look for it. Look for the loop. If it's big, the bigger it is, the bigger the fear. It's a fear of criticism. It's a fear of what people think you won't. And how will it show up in your personality? It will show up in your personality in that you will get your feelings hurt when nobody meant to hurt them. You can't take a suggestion without people thinking, oh, maybe I was doing it wrong. Maybe it's criticism. All right. I thought, this is not me. I started thinking about it as the time went on. It was so me. I mowed the yard. Not because I wanted to mow the yard, because I didn't want the neighbors to think that I wasn't taking care of my yard, you know. Worry about what you wear. That's part of that fear. Fear that people won't think you look good. I finally started going to the man. He said, we'd go in a restaurant after I'd made some comment about what I wasn't dressed for. And he said, did anybody tell you you weren't dressed right? So, but getting back to the fear is, oh, you care what people think. You want everybody to like you. If they get, but what is a good defense for this? Well, see, in handwriting, you can get into 3 kinds of defenses. There's the withdrawal, pulling back, keeping your mouth shut, hurting, pouting, dealing with it all by yourself. That really, I don't think was me. I didn't have any defenses when I first found it. And then there is the aggressive, sarcasm. You know what sarcasm is? We're back to the T. It's a slashing stroke. Starts off heavy, ends with very little pressure, just fades to nothing. The shorter and heavier it is, the more the sarcasm. If it lengthens out, that lessens the energy in it, and it won't be as hurtful. But people who defend themselves aggressively against any fear, not just the one I'm talking about, is sarcasm, irritability. They can be all kinds, but those are 2 of the most noticeable ones. One time we went on a trip with a couple to Paris. I was so young, I didn't even appreciate it. And both of them had a fear of disapproval. Both of them got their feelings hurt easy. I mean, like, what the girl would be late, we'd already be seated, and she would be late, and he'd say, what took you so long? Well, that's all it took. She took that as absolute criticism, and she would hit him with sarcasm. He would take the sarcasm too seriously and hit her with more sarcasm. They fought the whole trip. So that's the way to defend yourself aggressively. And these are the ones I have worked on. I really have worked on it. I didn't do it consciously, but I think through the years I have accomplished it. And then there's the sociably acceptable defense. Talkative, humor. Learn to laugh at yourself, learn to take things and move on. To me, humor is such a gentle trait. It's laughing at jokes, of course, but it's so much more than that. Humor is just such a healthy trait. You can just put things in perspective better if you can laugh at them and move on. So those are the 3 ways you can defend yourself. Now, the fears that come out in your writing, this fear of criticism, this fear of competition, this fear of failure, this fear of decisions, a lot. And you can tell everyone from handwriting. And then you can look and see how they handle them. One of the fun traits, and I'm just going to give you something easy to spot. or that if you're doing a quickie and you don't want to get into all of this, how one affects the other, you can just say, oh, you're defiant to authority. You don't want people telling you what to do. Look for the K. And there's a loop in the K. And then there is a second half of the K. But when the second half of the K gets higher than you're taught, which is the lowercase letters, when it gets up above the lowercase letters, you're defiant to authority. That's it. There's no beating around the bush. You don't have to argue about it. You don't like ordinance. Don't want to be taken for granted. If you're married to somebody that has this trait, you always put the ball in their court. In other words, if the grass needs cutting, you don't come out and say, you got to cut the grass today. It's That will make him lay there for 2 weeks because you ordered him to do it. It came across as an order. You got to use your diplomacy. I'll give you that trait too. And say, honey, when do you think you're going to get around to cutting the grass? You've put the ball in his court. Now he's got to say, I'll try to get to it today, or it might be tomorrow, but you don't order. Why do people get this trait? Probably because it's been misused in the past. Probably because they had parents that will always order them around. Don't scream so loud. Don't run so fast. Don't you lie to me. Don't you play with her. She'll ruin your reputation. My mother actually used to tell me that. Don't go around with her. She'll ruin your reputation. And we were young. We hadn't even known what reputation was. What was I going to tell you? Diplomacy. I love diplomacy. My favorite definition for diplomacy is tell them to go to hell and make them look forward to the trip. And so I think I have a good, I can explain it. Cascading strokes. Take your M. There are 3 humps in an M. The first one's tall, the second one's medium tall, the third one's not so tall. Cascades down from left to right. That's diplomacy. Now, it doesn't have to be in an M. It can be in 3 letters. It can be in mom, M-O-M, and the last M is really little, or any 3 letters you want to put together. Any 3 letters. If it's cascaded, it can be a group of letters. It can be a whole word. But anytime it starts off large and fades down to smaller, that's your diplomacy. So diplomacy is always good. One of my favorite stories for diplomacy. I was new at this. We were standing at Boulder Dam, a whole group who were traveling together, friends, and I was analyzing handwriting because the line was not moving, and I was entertaining. And some people weren't even in our group, and I was entertaining. But this couple, we were good, not good friends, but pretty good casual friends. And Charlie and Ruth were standing there. I was doing Charlie, and I said, you're irritable. And blah, blah, blah. I was giving him traits, and Ruth just got, she says, he is the sweetest man in the world. You're wrong there. He is not irritable. Well, I was new at this, and I figured, well, I probably was wrong. But just, maybe it was a little guidance, say, look at that handwriting again. And I picked it up, and he was so diplomatic. He was so tactful. And I said, you're very, very diplomatic. I said, maybe you're just so tactful you don't want her to know you're irritable. And he was standing there and he was going.
And for those of you who are hearing this instead of seeing this, Myrna is shaking her head yes.
Yes, good point. Good point. Another thing that happened, and this is sort of funny, but now that was what the combination of the irritability and the diplomacy, that's evaluation. And if you really get good at this, you have to weigh one trait against the other. And because one trait can be pretty strong in the writing, and yet you don't see it in the personality, that's because there's another trait that's even stronger, like diplomacy. That, hey, a person who's real diplomatic, socially, you'll never see them do anything wrong. Maybe at home, they'll let it drop. And in this case, he even used it at home. But so much for that. But that same trip, and I said I was doing some people that weren't even in our group. And when I'm doing handwriting, and if you do it, you're not doing you don't read the writing. You just look at the strokes. People say, "Oh my God, you should see my doctor's writing. I can't understand. I can't read a word he writes." I can't either, but I look at the strokes and they're good. He's smart and he's determined and he's to the point, and direct, and blah, blah, blah. So this man that was on the periphery of our group, he said, "Would you do mine?" And he had a little piece of paper and he handed it to me. I was sort of cute back then. I really was. This is a long time ago. Maybe 60 years ago. No, not quite that long. But I analyzed his handwriting. Told him, do this and do this and do this. And he said, "Well." And I said, "Well, what?" And he said, "You didn't read it?" I said, "No." And I picked it up and looked at it, and he says, "Would you meet me in my room this evening?"
Oh, my word.
That just shows you don't read it. You really don't read it. I mean, people can read their love letters that are very, very personal. And I say, I don't read it unless you want me to. I do not read it. Some other fun things. Oh, eye dots. Well, that's quick. I can tell you that real quick. If you make an eye dot very close to the stem of the eye, you have a close attention to detail. And if you have a page of writing and all of those eye dots are boom, 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 right over the eye, that means, honey, you can't see the forest for the trees. You get so hung up on details that you are just almost obsessed with taking care of every little thing. So it's nice to have some that are close and some maybe that aren't so close, so you can take care of them when necessary and leave them when they're not that important. Other things, Walt Disney, he used to circle his eye dots. That is a conscious effort to be different. Well, we know Walt was very different. He had visions that nobody had ever dreamed of. But now the one that irritability that I started out with Charlie on is a flick. You can almost feel it. If you had 6 eyes in front of it and you went in this motion. See, ordinarily an eye dot doesn't have motion, but if you've got a little flicky motion, that means irritability. The heavier the eye dot, and this is true on anything, the heavier it is, the more pressure behind the writing, the more energy the trait will have. If it's really, really faint and really, really lightweight, maybe I could just say you're a lightweight. I'm sort of a lightweight. And things just leave me really, really quick. The T's and the I's so much go together. A long T-bar. It's a good trait. It's a good trait. But I will say this, no trait is all good are all bad by itself. So, you know, don't ever judge. Don't ever judge. If you get into this, the best thing about it is to make you want to know about people. And if you want to understand people, you don't judge them. Sometimes I've been in our store and somebody is really in a bad mood, just chomping at the bit, and I said, in my mind, I'm saying, God, I'd like to see her handwriting. Instead of getting mad and wanting to knock back out a little bit. Okay, some of the T's, some of these 13 traits that you can see by just how you cross your T. A long one, enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is contagious. You get enthusiastic about something and you get rolling and people are interested. They want to jump on the bandwagon and help you. Enthusiasm is a great trait. It's a great trait. I've already told you about the sarcasm, the slashing. Starts off strong, fades out. Here again, the more pressure behind that sarcasm, the more biting it is. The shorter the stroke, the more biting it is. If it's a long slash mixed with some enthusiasm and maybe a little humor, then they can be sort of satirical and you sort of enjoy the way they're handling it. There's a little evaluation, humor, enthusiasm, along with sarcasm. Optimism, another good trait. Everybody loves an optimist. Well, I would think everybody, unless somebody's so down in the dumps they don't want to hear it. But an optimistic person, oh, no matter how bad today is, tomorrow's going to be better. And no matter what friend is really getting on your nerves, you can say, but she's got this going for her and I love her and blah, blah, blah. In other words, an optimist looks for the good. Optimists will tend to bury the bad or overlook it or reach for the good. Let's put reach in there. If the T-bar goes down from left to right, domineering, want to give orders. So often you will find that defiant K that doesn't want to take orders, they'll have a domineering T-bar. They love to give them. But haven't you heard? You always see in other people what you're guilty of yourself. Like attracts like. Oh, and I'm diverting again. Years ago, I did a party for Mademoiselle magazine. Of course, they were all writers. They were all marketers. They were creative designers. They loved it. Some people just love this more than others. For some reason, dentists like it too. My first lecture was from a dentist, my first class from a group of dentists. But here again, let's get back to Mademoiselle's magazine. I felt like if they were listening to me do everybody, I mean, they were standing in line. It went out of the room. I couldn't see the end of the line. And I felt like I was saying the same thing to all of them.
Yeah.
I mean, they all had the same traits, but that's what it takes to be on that magazine. And so that old saying, like attracts like, it really does. And so often in an individual group, it will run that way. Another thing that, if the T-bar doesn't hit the stem, if it goes just so far and doesn't hit the stem, procrastination. Put it off. Put it off. Don't do it if it doesn't have to be done. Now, this you have to look and see how many T's have.
Uh-huh.
All through the writing, they really have a problem. They don't want to get anything done. If it's just every now and then, there's something that they don't want to get done, something probably, or some group of things that they tend to put off. Another thing, is when a T, when you're making the stem, it goes up and then it comes back down. Well, if it goes up and then sort of spreads out, coming down, makes a little tent, that's stubbornness. It's like the little jackass that spreads his back legs and plants them and ain't gonna go anywhere, you know. Well, that's what that T, it spreads out like a little tent, and but you know something? They don't want to admit they're wrong. But for some reason, they very seldom are. I don't know why, but a lot of times a stubborn person is right, you know. They I guess you have to look at the rest of the writing to be sure about that. Do you have any questions? I'm just rattling on like a crazy person here.
I love everything you're saying, and I know that everybody in our audience is loving everything you're saying, because as we know, and you have agreed, everybody loves to hear about themselves and think about the people in their lives that they deal with. So please just keep on. I love when you talk about the T-bar, about the dotting of the I's or the slashing of the I's. I'm thinking, and of course this is entirely up to you, Myrna, because you're the expert on this. I've noticed very often when people have a G or a Y, they make that lower loop different lengths, different widths. Can you talk about that?
I can talk about anything you bring up. I can talk about anything you bring up. That brings up so much. There's lower loops and there's upper loops. Upper loops, philosophy, theory, religion, abstract. Anything in the upper zone is abstract. People who are so honed in on, I've got to see it, touch it, to believe it. They don't want the handwriting done because it's abstract. But they are minority. Most people have some interest in the abstract, which is philosophy, theory, religion. My daddy, he used to always go to sleep in church. He was on the board. He knew everybody. He always went to sleep. It was a joke around the whole congregation. Bill Smith went to sleep. And when he was confronted with it, it didn't bother him a bit. He says, nobody can talk more than 15 minutes without saying everything they want to say. And I can talk to a group for a very long time. And that's because when I'm doing a group, I make them write out a sentence. I make them write out a sentence. I write the same sentence on a board, blackboard or a whiteboard, I think they call them now. And we analyze. They look at their handwriting, everything I talk about. They look to see if they've got it. They look to see if they've got it. They will sit there forever. They will. They will. Everybody loves to hear about themselves. I do too. Why do you think I get my astrology done every night? Hear about myself. But now I don't know whether you like me saying this or not, but I've always said it anyway. I said, Maxine tells you what you come in with and the influences that it's going to have on you. I tell you what you're doing with it. If you are making the most of what you have learned. Lower loops, you mentioned lower loops. That's your imagination. See, that's the upper loops was the abstract. Middle case is every day. Every day. In other words, if you're open-minded in the middle case, which is an open A&O, open A&O's lots of space. In the E, that's an open mind. That's an open mind in any area. If you've got upper loops with a lot of space in the loop, that's an open mind. You'll listen to new ideas. Might not accept them, but you'll listen to them. See, I can get into the thinking patterns, but you almost want examples. But I can describe them pretty good, and we can get into that. Lower loops is action as you go into life. And so a good downstroke, the beginning of a lower loop, a good strong downstroke, is determination. Well, see, that high goal that I was talking about, the T-bar that's up high, add determination, that's really good. That's really good. Then add decisiveness. See, that's my problem. I'm not decisive. I don't make up my mind good. See, I know it. Don't do that much about it, but I know it. And so downward, strong loops. Anytime you got a strong downstroke, that's a form of energy taking action, and particularly if it goes into the lower zone. Then you add a loop. A big loop, well, let's just say a nice size loop, is a good imagination. This means you feed off of people you're around, experiences that you run into. This is where your creativeness feeds itself to exposure to people and experiences in life. And so a nice loop is imagination. And if it gets really big, I mean, exaggerated, it's still exaggerated imagination. And I will tell people, I say, when you tell a story, you want it to be so good that if there were 10 people at the luncheon, you might just say there were 15 or 20. Because, and you don't think you're lying. It's like your imagination just builds it bigger than it was. And so if you run into somebody like this all the time, you know, just to take it down a notch or two, it probably wasn't quite that great, you know. But A's and O's, oh, if they're open, in other words, if your A never closes, you're talkative. The words just get out. They just do. If it's a nice, and this is a very fine distinction, but if the A's and O's close very neatly with no loops, no nothing, this is reticence. It's closed, which means you're not talkative. Reticent, means it's not cluttered up with any other stroke. So you can have little loops that tie it together. If you know, a lot of people, that's a very common thing. But a reticent person is a person that will not tell you what they think unless you ask them. And then they will be very honest. That's a very honest trait. That nice, clean stroke. You don't see it that often. People will do things that deceit of self can be shown that way. Deceit of others can be shown in the A's and O's. And those things would keep that pure honesty from being quite as strong. Okay. M's and N's, yeah. One M and N that I like is needle points. If your M looks like a W, mm-hmm. and if your N looks like a U, mm-hmm. that's a needle point. Boom, boom, boom. Keen comprehension. You don't have to work at it. You think good on your feet. Your mind works like lightning. That's a good trait. But there are other good traits that can be told. Usually your thinking comes out in your M's and N's. It can come out in other areas, but if you're just beginning, that's the main place you would look, is the M's and N's. If they're rounded, like we're taught in school, if you're lucky enough to have been taught, boom, boom, boom. This is your creative thinking. This is your builder type mind. These people, if you've got children that write like this and they have those nice rounded loops, yes, they're creative, but don't throw them in on the third lesson. It's a builder. You've got to get that first lesson. And then you've got to get that second lesson. And then you're good. You're good if you got it all. But if you miss something, you're frustrated. And your teacher might think you're slow. It is a slower type thinking. Creative thinking is a slower type thinking. And then there's the exploratory mind. If you have points on your M's and N's. This is the mind that wants to find out more, that wants to explore, that wants to dig in. And I would say if you're perfect, you'll have all three. You'll have that quick, needle, keen comprehension, want to know more, explore, and then create in your quieter moments or your more. One time, Bunker was had a lady, and she wanted so much to be a writer. She wanted to be an author. I mean, it was a dream. She really was strong. And she says, do I have talent? Well, there are a few traits that you can spot talent. That creative mind is one of them, a mind that wants to create. Intuition is another one, the breaks in the writing, because this is also interpretiveness. It's pulling in. You've heard these popular stars that say they write a song in 30 minutes. Honey, that song is coming to them. It is just flowing right to them. Well, that is breaks in the writing, usually. They might come on it from other areas, but that would be my guess. And so, getting back to Bunker and the lady that wanted to be an author, and he said, he looked at her writing, and he looked at her writing, and he said, well, he says, you really don't have the talent traits to be an author. He says, but your goals are so high, your determination is so strong, and your willingness, you may very well be an author, which means you don't have to have the gift, the talent. If you want it bad enough, you very well, and I don't want to do anything political, because I really don't know who I want to vote for. I don't really want to vote for any of them. No, but I will say this. I saw Donald Trump's signature once, and it looked like the old exercise in school where you go up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. It was nothing but needle points. I don't care what he does wrong. He has got one brain that is lightning fast. Enough on that. I wish I had them all. I know you've done them all, or the ones you could get. And I would love to, but I haven't pursued it, and I don't know whether it's even out there. The creative. If you wanted to be an author, you would have probably breaks in the writing, and a delta D. You don't see it hardly ever, but it's supposed to be a real gift for writing, and that is the D starts and then ends up at the top. It never comes back down, never a loop. It's almost like a printed D, only you do it cursively. You just, and that would be in the intuition and the creativeness. Intuition is always good with any kind of creative, with music, with art, with anything like that. Emotion. The first thing we learn in the analyzing handwriting is emotional response. where's the slant of your writing? If it's way forward to the right, you're very emotional. I say that. And yet people who are very emotional, they will build up every kind of trait in the world to slow it down so that you might not see it in them. But by nature, they are so emotional. You can tell how they feel by the twitch of their lip, the shrug of their shoulders, the tear in the corner of their eye, But then there's the straight, and these are the extremes. These extremes that are all levels in between. But the far forward is you're very, very emotional. Oh, they'll be impulsive. They'll go shopping and buy things and get home and say, what the hell was I thinking about? I don't need that. Or they'll say things and do things and later think, I shouldn't have done that. What was I thinking? Okay, then there is the backhand writer. And this is emotional withdrawal. These people have probably been hurt as a child or had nobody to relate to. And they have learned to deal with it all by themselves. And that gets into some deep stuff I don't want to really touch on here because it's very hard to spot it in the personality. They will do what's best for them. Because that's the only way they know to deal with is how something affects them. Now, the trait I hate the most, and I'm going to have to sneak it in here real quick.
No, you've got plenty of time. Go ahead.
But it's the worst trait, I think, that I would want. And yet, it's the easiest trait to get rid of. And that's the trait of resentment. And resentment is a straight line at the beginning of a word. Look at your T. Often it's a straight up line at the beginning of a T. Or some people will put it on the beginning of a C, and what it is, it's blaming other people. It's blaming other people, feeling sorry for yourself. Well, see, nobody wants to hear poor me. I mean, nobody wants to be that. But how do you get there? How do you get there? You're probably a pushover. Think about what it would take to make you on guard. A resentful person is on guard. They don't want to get into any situation that they've been in before that was unpleasant. But what gets you into situations that are unpleasant? You are too emotional. They can get you on your heartstrings. You're yielding. I didn't get to that trait, but it's a soft, rounded S. That means people can talk you into things. Generosity. Didn't get into that. It's a nice flowing outward ending. Just like that, just like, oops, you can't see it. But at the end, where it just circles out nice, something you don't get in printing. And those three traits alone, they can't say no. You get them on their heartstrings, they're generous. Oh, they get made president of the organization when somebody said, oh, it won't take much time and it takes all the time in the world, and you build resentment. Or they say, oh, well, yeah, well, it won't cost much, and then they put you on automatic shipment. You get it over and over and over again, and you can't find the number to cancel. I mean, they just, or it's like me. For some reason, I don't say no well. I don't say no well, and so people put things on you, and you think, I don't want to do this. Okay, so the easiest thing in the world to get rid of this trait is if you ever understand it in yourself, decide you do not want it, then you have to say, I am this soft, I'm this responsive, I am this weak-willed, whatever the case, I got it into it myself. I can say no if I choose to say no. I can protect myself if I'm strong enough to protect myself. And so, there you are. If you've got resentment and you don't like it, you analyze yourself and decide you like yourself well enough to get into these situations, or you are strong enough to learn how to say no. And I could go on and on and on.
And you know, Myrna, I hope you will, because as many years as I have known you, I can sit and listen to you,
Oh.
the master of handwriting analysis. I can sit and listen to you for hours because you make it so easily understandable. And I think one of your greatest gifts is that you understand people, and when you present the information to them, you present it in such a way that they can hear it. It's that diplomacy, that there is not a judgment on it. You're just saying, now this is how it is, and this is how you can change it. If you choose to, you give people the knowledge, the information, and what I call the good enough message, so that they can accept these traits and realize we are all human. So that what I would love you to do in the future is come on back and part 2.
We might have to make that 30 minutes. Actually, I gave you an awful lot.
I know you did. I know you did. So, everybody, I hope that you have enjoyed my dear friend, Myrna Bentley, and I'm going to tell you how to get in touch with her. If you are interested in having Myrna do your own handwriting analysis, you can get in touch with her at her email. It is mjbgrapho@bellsouth.net, and I'm going to spell that for you. M like Myrna, J, B like Bentley, Grapho, GRAPHO @bellsouth.net. You have a taste of what a master she is at helping you understand yourself. And she presents it in such a way that you will adore your time with her. I can't thank you enough, Myrna, for being my guest. And I hope that all of you will join me next week when, once again, we move into the magic with another incredible mover and shaker. Until then, this is Maxine Taylor reminding you that when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Absolutely.